I love. I mean, that was probably my favorite scene. But those are space physics. Those are space coordinates.
Right.
And he's going,
This is anything to account for the
it's like
atmosphere.
space coordinates. You know,
You're
you're my
able to figure
tech
that out?
guy, and you didn't
You're my
get
science
this.
guy.
Yeah. I was
I think-
totally going to troll Ben for this, but the director pulled it on you guys this time. So
That's
yeah.
okay.
I know I was going to be like, that's all well and good, guys, but hey, Ben, tell us about the thing. And then,
Yeah, Ben, tell us about Captain Marvel. Welcome to the Captain Marvel
fine.
podcast.
It was fine. Welcome to the Dresden Files podcast, where we spoil the latest Marvel release instead of talking about the Dresden Files. Not much news today.
what chapter are we on?
49, I think, as of the 12th.
Yeah. So you guys that are banking for the low 50s are starting to get yourselves out of the betting pool, I think.
They were always wrong.
Yeah.
Low 50s.
He's about to write the end any day now.
Today we're talking about the 10th full-length Dresden Files novel, Small Favor.
Woo!
Ooh.
That was
It's
kind of
actually
like
based on the Denarians.
You know,
right.
That's a
Six
solid
divisions,
top
five
5
divisions.
A solid what?
top 5.
Oh, yeah.
This is definitely one of my favorites, and listening to it again was kind of proved why.
Right. It's, for me, I think some of the emotional nonsense that happens in it keeps it from shining entirely, which really should just give it the automatic, 4+ stars anyway. But like this is one of the more quintessential books where it's just like, if you want a taste of like what all of the Dresden Files is, you want to see Harry be witty, you want to see them deal with the fairies and, how that interacts with like, police dealing with them and so forth and so on. Like you want to see Marcone, just everything. Everybody is in this book, kind of like Peace Talks. So, just had to get that in early.
Yep.
There's a quick audiobook note. Is it just me, or is James going way more heavy on the Chicago accent on McCone in this one than what
Marco
I've
kind of
noticed?
sounded New
other
York
times?
almost.
Well, he's doing some sort of accent at least, like way more than I feel like he usually does on McCone.
Well, the way Marcone sounded in this one actually sounded like what he usually does Hendrix, which got a little jarring.
It did seem like he kind of shook some things up this time because there were a couple of things that like pulled me out of it for a second, and then I'm like, yeah, whatever, and just kind of kept going. But yeah, he definitely seemed to have changed some things. So who wants to do the plot synopsis?
Justin.
Of course, it's always me. So this will be pretty funny because this will be like 1, 2, skip a few, we're done, because I basically omited like the middle half of the book this time. But
Yeah, and then I put it all back in.
oh, did you? Okay. So I mean, roughly, at a high level, so we open up in the carpenter's backyard, and Harry's throwing snowballs at Molly with the help of the Jawas, because that's better than softballs, which is how he learned how to create shields.
And softballs are better than rocks, which is how Morgan learned.
Right. And so basically you get a nice little endearing moment until, of course, summer comes knocking. Because it's the Gruffs. So we get the babiest Gruffs come and basically attack the Carpenter house. And it was just kind of interesting because like Harry freaks out, Molly kind of freaks out, but mostly keeps her cool. And then you see Charity just be like, hey, guess what? This is why we do drills. And so, she just says emergency. All the kids go inside. Molly throws a veil, pulls one over on one of the Gruffs. Harry kind of shuts him down, chases him off, kills one, right? At least one. Turned him into barbecue lamb or whatever.
Yeah,
Goat.
and Charity nail guns at least one of them.
Right.
I
Which
feel like all of them die there, but it's been all like 2 weeks. I started right after we finished the last one.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you get some cool moments there. I'm trying to remember what's the next chronologically, because Murphy shows up, right? Murphy gives him the phone call, whatever. Basically,
He talks
so
to Bob, and then he goes to find out about the pentagram hellfire stuff.
right, yeah. So in this one, basically the Denarians are back. Spoilers, because we don't know that just yet. But basically, they had created some giant freaking pentagram thing out of hellfire. and had basically used it to carve through at least one of Marcone's buildings and a couple other, innocent bystander type buildings and get at him
as you do in the Dresden Files.
Right. And get at him in his safe house. And so basically Marcone's been kidnapped. Murphy brings him in on it, and then we start to find out that this is part of why Winter and Summer are involved, is because Mab is going to ask Harry for a small favor. She's asking him for her second of her 3 favors that she can ask for, basically to have Harry investigate who, what, where, when, why, whatever. So now he's, they call him Esquire, right? Or is he? Yeah, so he's Esquire of Winter. Whatever.
Or is it Aquarium of Summer and an emissary of Winter?
Emissary of Winter. Okay, yeah. I knew the emissary thing was from Summer Night and everything, but
basically whenever he does a favor for he's an emissary.
Yep.
Right.
2 times.
So yeah, so they have him as an emissary again. Let's see, he has a nice, charming little conversation with Fix, right? Where basically
with a gun in your face.
Right. Yeah, it was very Kincaid. What was funny because it was like, what was the one from Blood Rights, right, where Kincaid gets the drop on him in his office? You get the gruff voice, you don't get the introduction for the character, you don't quite place Marster's vocalizations just yet, and it's like, oh yeah, right, Fix is in this one, for a quick moment. So,
and that was another time when he actually changed the way he usually does Fix's voice to make it sound more like Kincaid.
Okay, so it's not just me then, because I was definitely like, different. I was like, I know Kincaid's in this, but
different there. But I took it as he was trying to be tough.
Did you just make your voice lower?
And he's just like, "Hey, Harry."
Yeah, you're copying me. Anyway, so you get a whole thing where he's kind of like warning Harry / kind of threatening him because he's technically at odds and whatever, and Winter doesn't have a knight, and Mab wants Harry to be the knight, so I guess Harry is the proxy knight for this one, and that's why Fix gets to show up and threaten him. I don't know, like I think
he's worried that he actually is a knight.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, because if Harry decides to sucker punch Fix, then
And Fix says to show him the inside of his right wrist, I think. Was it? And is it because that would have shown whether or not he was the knight? But once he does become the knight, I don't think Harry has anything showing on his wrist.
Yeah, I recall that. We didn't get an elaboration, right? And I don't think it's ever expanded on. So yeah.
But what I think is, because I thought about the same thing, is just that's the thing Jim might have forgotten.
Or it's a structure that Summer did that Winter doesn't, but Fix assumed that Winter would as well.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, that'd be a really good retcon too.
I'm helpful that way.
I'm sure that it is every bit as important as the library, Lord Wraith's library. It's totally going to come back and be explained later. So don't you worry about that. So you get that tender little moment. Trying to remember what else is in between, but basically from here, I'm thinking he just gets chased by the next level of Gruffs, right?
He goes to the scene of the ritual thing there. He summons
he steals Rollins' donut.
Yeah, he steals Rollins'.
He goes to talk to Helen Beckett, and he meets up with Torelli and all them.
That's after he summons.
That's after Fix.
First thing.
So
before that, even I missed the whole thing then, because he summons Toot Toot.
Right.
He has a conversation with Mab right after he sees the thing with
right. And then he hooks up with Thomas, and then Fix shows up with the shotgun, and then he runs into Helen Beckett.
So the second tier of Gruffs was earlier than the Fix.
Yeah, it was right after the
Mab.
He found the pentagram stuff and talked to him.
Because he steals Rollins' donut, summons Toot, runs up to his face and says, "Run away, forget about the donut."
But what about the donut? Forget about the donut.
And then Mab says, "He was not warning you about me."
Right. and then the Gruffs jump him.
Yeah.
Which I always forget the second tier Gruffs because, like, I think in my head it's like there's 3 Billy Goats in the folklore, right? And so I'm like, there's 3 levels because that makes sense, but no, there's 4. And these guys he mostly gets away from. He hurts them with nails, which seems to be a recurring theme and will be brought up again later. The whole Zalord's Guard and the fact that like most of the ones that he saved from White Knight are probably enlisted, or at least a fair number of them now. The missing, of course, Rollins' like key contribution to the book, which is, Harry and Rollins catching up with each other, and Harry's like, "How's your leg?" And Rollins is like, "Well, it starts acting up again when I'm being asked to leave." Ow. So one of my favorite lines in this book. So Harry's trying to summon Toot Toot, and Toot Toot doesn't want the donut because he's afraid of the Gruffs. Harry loses them in a hardware store by like jumping off of the roof and into like a pile of snow, right? Or is it snow and garbage? Because Harry...
I thought it was mostly just snow, but he littered it with steel nails.
Down, like almost above ground. He actually crawls down the side of a building in a snowstorm,
right,
and then falls in the end down into a bank of snow.
Right. Yeah. So
and then he leaves again on his staff and falls into the snowbank again.
Right. That's Harry. So there you go. Okay. So from there, he goes and has his conversation with Fix, and then talks.
And then he went home because he set up the thing with Little Chicago and Mister and Catnip and the Silverleaf Pentacle thingy.
That's not till later.
But he does that before they go to see Beckett.
And it is fairly early because that was the thing that I liked, is like showing one of Harry's being clever moments, right? So he sets up this, he realizes that Summer is probably tracking him through the pin leaf. So he takes his little silver oak pin leaf, ties it to an elastic or something over Little Chicago, pumps a full bunch of energy in it, and then has Mister chase it. So every time he grabs the thing, it touches a random spot on the map, which is like fantastic and great, because it's like what you lose sight of, or what I lose sight of anyways in this book, is that Harry is not an evoker. He doesn't just run around smashing shit because that's what he's good at. He's a bruiser, great, but where his skills lie is thaumaturgy. And so when you actually see him be like, no, this is what I'm actually good at. Like, yeah, okay, I can smash, glass chandeliers all day, but what I'm really good at
is evocation, right? It's moving energy around.
Well, yeah, but the reason why he's quote unquote good at that is because he's got more of it to throw around. So he's like Magog, right? Like, he's got a bunch of metaphysical energy. He is not at all a finesse fighter. You want to see somebody who's badass finesse, that's Lucio, and why she's got much less raw power than Dresden does, but she's more capable because she's got experience and finesse and. So I just like to see it when Harry does things like Little Chicago, and then use Little Chicago to like surprise you, the first time you kind of see this. So he sets that up. He goes to talk to Demeter. He and Thomas show up.
The best exchange in the entire book. Like, where are we going? To where they treat me like royalty. And Thomas goes, "We're going to Burger King."
Right.
Yeah. It is like the top line, in my opinion, in the entire book.
I think also Harry has to be like, "Must not kill, brother."
Yeah. Spell fratricide and a few others.
Justifiable homicide.
Right. Definitely a good point.
They go to executive priority and dazzled by boobs, and Thomas just kind of takes a dumbbell and turns it into a curlicue.
Right. Yeah. So they finally talk the frontline staff into letting them go see Demeter, who's not there because she's hiding, because she's the next in command, or she's one of the lieutenants or whatever. And one of the other lieutenants, I forget the dude's name.
Torelli.
Yeah, Torelli, very mafioso sounding, right? So he shows up with a bunch of toughs and decides he's gonna.
Audiobook listeners, have you heard him as well? Like, when he talks, he's like stereotypical gangster.
Right.
Like the accent, it's well actually pretty well done, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because like the Torelli character to me is just one of those guys who's like, he's somehow survived to this point. Doesn't necessarily mean that he was good or useful or anything. He's just like Torelli would be the guy who like runs the hitters or something, right? Where he's just like, I'm the guy who goes and hurts people and gets shit done, but not necessarily because he's super useful to Marcone's, vision, right? Like obviously it's the mafia hurting people as part of what they do. That's why they're the bad guys. But like, Marcone does just as much above board with business, and Torelli is not the guy that's working for the police so that he can siphon off information, right? He's not one of the top level spies or whatever. So
I have the impression that he runs drugs, but I don't know if I just imagine that he's like the drug runner.
Okay. Yeah, it could be. So he's this, big deal street level guy, decides he's going to come and try and, start reining in some of Marcone's other interests, like, his executive whorehouse, so he shows up to get the passwords and account numbers and everything like that. And then, Thomas and Harry intervene, and Harry can beat up mafia thugs all day, so relative power level, they basically don't even do anything hardly. They just rough them up a little bit.
Not till later anyway.
Right. Where do they go next?
They went to the safe house that Beckett told them the location of and found Guard putting her intestines back inside.
Super fun moment. Yeah. So you get that, Guard. Was she using the staple gun at this point?
No, she's using glue because she said she saw it on a werewolf movie.
Right. Which I thought was also great. I'm not sure actually. Yeah,
it's an actual reference.
What use are you?
I'm really, really sure.
Well, I'm sorry. Like it's probably like a Hammer film, which I'm aware of their existence, but I don't necessarily like have watched them all and committed them to memory. So, but
that's Marvel, more Dresden references.
I know, right? I will endeavor next time there's a pop culture reference I don't get. I'll work on that in the Dresden Files anyway. Boy. That'd be a lot of references. So you show up. Hendricks and Guard are the only ones here because they were the only ones that made it into the safe house with Marcone. For whatever reason, the Denarians didn't take them. It occurs to me right now. I'm like, that's kind of interesting.
Because
they wanted Guard to get, they want Guard to get Harry to get the archive and all that.
Good points. Yeah. So the Denarians are layering out their plan and everything like that. Tessa attacks with Magog and a couple others. Was Thorn and Amshiel in this one? Was he part of this crew?
I don't think so.
No.
Okay. Because I know he shows up at the aquarium.
I'm just trying to get he's in the book.
Right. Well, yeah, he's in the book for sure. But this one was great because you get another White Knight retro reference where Harry basically uses the chain with a plug on the end of it, throws it at Tessa, who grabs it and is so proud of herself for being so smart as he immediately uses what I'm assuming is earth magic to shove it in the socket and basically light her up. And then Guard, who's, shoving her guts back in, starts going to town. I forget what her weapon of choice was. Was she an assault rifle at this point? Basically just unloads into Tessa. Yeah, so...
And then Tessa explodes into tiny bugs?
Right, because that's one of her things. So they tried to parlay with Dresden, but he's kind of, fallen for that enough times, or never really did, but now he's definitely not fucking listening. Thomas kills... It's not Magog, he kills one of the other ones, right?
Yeah,
and
one of the named once and never showed up again, I think.
Right. Makes off with his coin, and then they have a nice, cute little moment of, oh, God, it's a fucking coin. Don't touch it, as I put it in the glove box because I've got nothing else to do with it.
Aquarium. That's the one that Thomas killed.
Right.
Whoever. He didn't have a named host, but...
Right. So they have a pretty good talk about how, Thomas thinks that he'd be able to resist the Fallen's temptation, and Dresden's like, no, I've got one word for you, Justine, which is the same.
Able to just Justine again. Yeah, we better get rid of this.
Right. Which ironically is the same thing Mad basically says later, which is, I'll just get tired of your shit and recruit your brother. He's in love. That's mortal enough for me. So Just kind of interesting in its own right.
That's
So
probably where Harry has been the most like. Okay, not the most, because the most probably when he's like holding a gun to her head. But that's one of the points where he's been the most assertive. Like, get the fuck off my brother, bitch.
with Mab, you mean?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So from here, they go to Michael's place, which is just like a total shit show waiting to happen. And basically, they put him out in the garage, right?
So in the shed, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Sorry. I guess I assumed that there's like 6 people in this place, so it always struck me as like a larger structure or something. But
yeah, it's a work shed.
It's his work. It's
right.
like his workshop, right?
Right. So so they get everybody there plus Sonya now, because Sonya just happened to be coming into Chicago, just happened to get snowed in, and just happened to know somebody who would be able to put him up for a couple of days or whatever. So now we've got 2 of the knights to counter the Denarians, plus Dresden's got the sword, and the plot thickens. From here, that's when he calls in Lucio, correct? And then they contact the archive.
Mm-hmm.
So Guard basically talks him into getting the archive involved because Harry's worked with the archive in the past, and Marcone is a signatory of the Accords because he's a freeholding lord. So Guard asks him to issue the challenge on their behalf.
Well, it was his choice to bring in. She just wanted the challenge met. They knew he would pick the archive because he's Harry and he's a creature of habit.
Right. From here, do we go straight to the train station, or
no? He goes to meet Murphy at Max.
Oh yes. All right. So they go to Max. He fills Murphy in on everything up to this point, etc. They have their conversation, and I believe it starts ending up with Murphy being like, "I can't help you because I still have a job." And
the opposite. Murphy saying, "This is my town, my authority, and I'm going to butt in." And Harry says, "No, because they're too big."
Oh, yes.
Tiny.
This is where he reminds her about the
loop
quote-unquote terrorist from the airport a couple of years ago.
Oh, yeah, that too.
That and the other thing.
Yeah.
And she makes the offer that she could, make this a terrorist threat, and he considers it, but then he's like...
Actually a pretty pivotal moment in the book here, because in the series, because if the Gruff hadn't come in there, she would have pulled in everything, like full mortal. It probably would have been pretty bad.
Right. Maybe. I mean, from what we've seen, in Full Moon, if it was that level of response, then yes, it would have been bad. But I'm still waiting to see what they bring to bear in peace talks because
everything will be there in peace talks.
But I mean, specifically, I think we know that the FBI is going to be involved. We specifically know that there are government level spooks. So is he going to pull like an X-Files where they're like a subset of the FBI, or are they their own thing? Like the mortals in general, like if you take it from the big picture view, they have some kind of response, for this sort of thing. And I just had a different thought. So, a different character I'd like to see brought back for that sort of thing. But you guys, anyway. So Tiny shows up in the bar. They have this nice conversation about how Tiny's basically there because you've hurt my brothers and you employed the Bane against them because nails are bad, MK. And, they...
Plus, it's his job.
I really like how the Tiny is literally like, he's like, you were trying to kill me, and he's not phased. That's not a good enough reason.
Right.
Use iron.
Trying to kill me. Yeah. Yeah, so and then Murphy gets in his face because Tiny basically does the whole like, let's step outside and settle this, moment. And she goes down the list of like, well, like I'm not a signatory of the Accords, but Dresden is a Chicago citizen and I am sworn to protect him. So, maybe you should do the math on that. And then you should do the math on what steel jacketed hollow points feel like as they enter your body. And he's like, we'll deal with this later. So...
And Mac was so happy that he gave them special beer because all the descriptions of Tiny being so big in the barroom, of like his horns gouging into the ceiling, and he flicked an ear and napkins several tables away started falling off tables.
Right. He broke multiple fans, so like 2 or 3 of the fans out of his 13. So,
Even though Mac tried to stop them.
right. Yeah. All right. So from there, what's next?
Burger King Council.
Okay, so they do their war council.
And then they get Torelli's hitters come after them.
They want
but
to
after
make-
Thomas
I don't
is out playing Harry.
Hmm.
Right. Yes. So yeah. Though at the war council, correct me. I mean, I don't remember a ton of stuff happening, but basically they give Thomas the little clay figurine that turns him into Harry. And
Right.
then
It's basically giving everyone the rundown of what the Denarians are and why this is going down.
Right. And then Molly ends up having to put makeup on Thomas to make him look like a raccoon because Harry's already getting his ass kicked, of course. And they give him his duster and a few other things. Murphy.
Smart move.
Right. Murphy and Harry are driving someplace I can't remember
Back to Michael's.
Okay, when the hitters catch up with them. This one was notable to me just because we had talked about some things that had happened, which was like Harry uses wind against them. So that was kind of interesting. And then he also uses his little ball of sunshine to, get some information out of the guy about who's coming after them and why and, all of that stuff. Okay, apparently I can't milepost today, but I can fill in all the details. So what's next?
Next is the train station. Well, it's talking to Guard about who knew
so
where.
Oh, right.
They make their way back to Michael's, and they talk to Guard. It's like, you have information, you need to give it to me. And she puts up a fight up until Hendrix says, it's okay, tell him.
Right.
And then she tells him more about the safe room and all things that were built, and eventually leads to Dresden's the blood box thing and the Union Station.
Right. Well, because she tells him about the safe house and everything like that, and then Harry's like, okay, I need everybody else to leave, and Hendrix like stops sharpening his knife or cleaning his gun or whatever, and like walks out of the room because he does these all at different points in time, and then he's like, okay, now help me track Marcone down. And she's like, whatever are you talking about? And it's like, you have an insurance policy, like you've got blood on everybody just in case it starts coming down on you. I'm sure of it. And so she tells him about the locker at the train station.
And don't have anything you care about in front of it when you open it.
Which won't ever come back again. It's a really weird throwaway line. So then they go to the train station, right? Because everything's got to happen at the same time. So you've got, Lucio and the archive just happen to be showing up when the Merc gets sprung and they get attacked by Hobbs, which are winter critters.
Yep.
And so you get kind of a repeat of proven guilty, where basically everything goes dark. And I mean, did I miss like a general mayhem type of thing? Like, obviously you get the whole moment where they attack them in the ticket booth or whatever, but it's a train station. Like, what happened to all the other people?
There were
around.
very few people because it was
Because of the weather.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was already deserted. There was just a few people that got apparently stuck due to the weather and the trains, and those were the people who were getting attacked at the ticket booth. And then there's one janitor named Joe who's just walking around. That's totally not Uriel.
No, it's not.
Right. Because that's Jake, right? Jake is
Except,
Later.
Yeah.
why is Joe being mentioned?
Because Harry talks about how he's been going back and forth through the train station for the Paranet. So
No. It seems
he knows the
suspicious to me
locals.
because of the issue that the fact that when they go there to get Guard's box is when there's a Knight of the Cross and Ivy needs help and the Hobbs. It's too suspicious. Like, Uriel's doing something to make sure it happened that way, to make sure Ivy would be okay. This is at least the way I took it.
The main thing that makes me hesitate on your suggestion there is the fact that, like, what tipped the scales to allow Uriel to act? Like, what would allow Uriel to intervene?
They're attempting to take away Ivy's free will so he can allow his knight to attempt to keep her safe.
There's no Denarian influence there, though. That's all Mab. Mab is maybe trying to kill her, maybe trying to abduct her. That doesn't matter to them.
Which, I mean, I guess that brings up an interesting point too. If Ivy had died for some reason, what the hell would have happened? I mean, the archive would have just been unmade at that point, right? Because there is no chain.
Well, presumably you would think that it goes to the next closest blood relative if they had some kind of common sense when they made this.
Right.
But it's possible they didn't.
Or
Well,
maybe if Mab was behind the Hobbs, which I always felt a bit conflicted about, then maybe she just wants to keep Ivy out of the hands of the Denarians for a certain amount of time.
Yeah. Well, that was. I mean, Harry's the one who jumps to, oh, they were trying to kill her, but Ivy herself later says, well, they could have just been trying to abduct me, and you know, Mab could have easily just been trying to get her off the board in that respect.
Right. Which, I mean, yeah, I'm assuming the only problem I have with that theory is that the Hobbs seem pretty stupid. You know, like they were going to make off with her. It's not like they were going to hold her for ransom. You know, they were probably going to take her, eat her, or, you know, whatever else Hobbs do. So
I don't think, like, no matter how big that Hobb army was, they would have gotten her, like, wouldn't have gotten to her.
Well, that's fair too. I mean, Kincaid, he wouldn't have been able to do too much though, because as Lucio mentions, if I hadn't seen him go through security, I wouldn't have ridden with him, because, you know, she knows his reputation.
Ivy could have demolished them.
Yeah, definitely Ivy, you know, would have been able to throw down potentially.
Well,
so
the other possibility is that's why you send a weak guard. You essentially you scare Ivy off, even if she knows she can handle them. Her archive survival nature is going to kick in, and she may just leave town.
Right.
And then problem solved again.
Right. So the whole train thing, the train station, very cool moments. I mean, you get them locked in.
As a miracle worker, you get a lousy miracle.
Right. Yeah, you get him locked in the ticket booth. You get Michael. You get to see him be a carpenter. So I love just a little reference where he just kind of like he puts his thumb up like this, like he's judging where the stud would be, and then rams the sword through the drywall and kills a Hobb. You know. So
is it in this book or one of the last couple of books where Michael has to go through visits Harry, and he sees what Harry did to his store, and he's like, "This is shoddy craftsmanship."
It's this one. Because that happens right after this. So, so you get some moments like that. You get some nice Night of the Living Dead. You know, them trying to like smash their way through the walls and door and everything like that. You know, you get Harry get smart again. This is again thaumaturgy, I believe, where he basically busts off one of the sprinkler heads, and then
like to like, right? That's thaumaturgy.
Right. We didn't mention it earlier with the first set of Gruffs. He very clearly had his blasting rod, but mysteriously
I have a question.
Okay.
He uses a lighter to kick off the sprinkler system and uses thaumaturgy to link the sprinklers. And when he remembers the blasting rod, all of his other fire magic comes back to him. But he used the facey melty sun thingy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's too new and Mab didn't know about it. That's why he can use it.
It's still fire. I mean,
Yeah.
well, that's the other
she
thing.
had to know what she was looking for to remove, right? And she knows.
It's not like she went through his head and was like specifically, okay, Fuego Pyros, you know, Fuego Pyro Fuego, and he's taking out all individual spells. He's just taking away his general memory of fire. And I think the reason the little ball of sunshine can stay is because the way he's using it, even though it is fire technically, he's using it as both a light source and not as active fire. So it's like it skirts the line just enough where maybe because he says himself he can't really call up a big one, partly because of the Merc and partly because.
But she takes away the memory of fire with the idea that Summer is going to track him by his like energy type now that they are familiar with it, and he imbued Summer's fire with it.
Right.
Which they do.
Right.
Because Tiny shows up right after he uses it in the train station.
But in a completely different section of Chicago. Because he did the sunshine ball near Michael's house, and then they go downtown to Union Station.
But then he does it again, right? So
But he didn't do it there. No, he used a lighter against the sprinklers.
Against the sprinklers, but he calls up the little ball of sunshine to see at first.
Did he?
Mm-hmm. because the Merc was shutting down the electricity, so the only things that were working were basically Michael's sword and his little ball of sunshine. And then right after that, he says the
necklace.
Rush a miracle work, or you get lousy miracle line is right after that.
Okay, continue while I find this.
Right. But it is all interesting along the same lines, right?
I think he doesn't use a lighter, actually. I don't think he uses a lighter.
No, he definitely used a lighter against the sprinklers.
He just talks about how it gets so hot that it's like getting like even starting to burn through his glove and his scarred hand. I'm like, can a lighter really make a sprinkler head that hot?
Oh no, he did. He used the little ball of sunshine to make the sprinklers go off.
Yeah,
right.
What?
I poured all the energy I could into the little ball of sunshine, which suddenly had several dozen sprinkler heads to absorb its energy instead of only one.
Right.
Yeah, that's why, because he ramped it up. He ramped up the little ball of sunshine, and now it's like a proper fire spell. So that's where Tiny comes this time, as opposed to when he's just using it out in the middle of a blizzard for close range threatening.
And it also might be as much as they had 2 blips instead of just 1, because Mister is still running around doing his little Chicago thing. I forget when he stops doing that, because at some point Harry does go back and like Mister's all passed out, right?
Yeah, that was during the Burger King War Council because Molly commented on it.
Okay, so it was before this though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, there is the prospect that when he does it the first time, he's out in the middle of a literal blizzard, so you have winter, quote unquote, potentially stymieing the senses of it.
He also just might have not had enough time to get to him before he got to the safety or Michael's house.
That's true.
Right.
Well, it's possible, but I mean, he literally shows up at the end of the chapter after he does this ball of sunshine, so it's not like he has that much problem with speed.
Yeah, but they were right next to Michael's
wherever.
house. Like, it literally, from he uses that to they go to Michael's house, we're talking minutes, if that much.
Right, but what I'm saying is, at that point, Tiny, it doesn't, it's not like Michael has angelic protection yet. If Tiny wanted to show up, he could have.
I'm pretty sure it's
going based on that logic.
Right. It is an interesting question, and it is worth pointing out. It does feel like a discrepancy, and I hadn't really caught it yet. And that we were having this conversation pre-show, which was like, when did Harry and Michael have that conversation? But it's not until much, much later after the aquarium. So he definitely shouldn't have knowledge of his fire spells right now. I'm sure there's a good explanation. It sounds like something we need to put down for episode 77 for when we get him back on the show. Director Koff, you're the keeper of those questions, right? So
yeah, somewhere.
So we have that moment. We have him fight Tiny. There's some great references about it not being a Tom and Jerry cartoon, and it's Roadkill 101, right? Where basically, Tiny is just so huge and so massive that all he could do is run. He does put the hurt on him a little bit. I'm trying to remember. Oh, he got the.
It's Benjamin.
Yeah, he got the Hobbs to attack Tiny and start roughing him up. They even gouged out one of his eyes, didn't they? And then basically he got free of the Hobbs, chased Harry to where the
locker.
Yeah, the locker was, and then Harry uses Guard's ward basically to blow Tiny into the next dimension practically. Tiny ends up surviving it, but his leg's all blown off and he's all fucked up and everything. And then he melts into the ground saying, my brother will avenge me. And he's like, come on, another one?
You would spare me, Winterbound.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not a bad guy. Hello?
And I mean,
should have showed him his wrist. He doesn't have his tattoo.
Right. That was one thing that I liked about the Tiny character is obviously he shows up, he's the bruiser, whatever, but his whole thing, he's very honorable, right? Everything's, thee, thou, honor, blah, blah, blah. And then he gets his ass kicked, thanks to Guard, I guess. So
I want to see Guard really go for it someday.
Well, you
Speaking
do.
Of the short story wasn't enough.
Right.
No.
Thing we kind of missed. Hendrix is way higher, possibly Marcone's second, which I didn't think he was. I thought they were close, and he was this.
Yeah, he's pretty much been his right hand man.
Command, right?
Yeah, they were in the Marines
since
together.
the beginning. He's been his right hand. He's been there literally since Stormfront.
Just because you're his, like, you've been in the Marines together and you're like he's close, a personal bodyguard because they can trust each other, it doesn't mean that Hendrix is high up in the organization power wise.
Sure.
And Hendrix was
like
actually
like a consigliere in, like, it's like can be like it's the advisor to the Don or Marcone in this case, but that doesn't mean they get respect, but they don't have like necessarily a lot of power in a mafia structure. But it's okay. Guard is like, if Hendrix says he can talk, that's good enough.
Well, it's not like Guard would ever be able to outrank him. I mean, she could outrank other people, but she's still an outsider. She's hired help, so she's not gonna.
But she's magically bound. I felt like she cannot talk until Hendrix says it's okay.
No,
I feel like
it's not
it's-
magic.
She could. She's not a.
Yeah,
she's not a
yeah,
fairy.
it is.
She's just cautious.
I wouldn't put it past Vatarung to have put like a Gaius on her to be like, you follow.
She's like,
you know.
I can't, not won't,
Right.
can't.
Right. It does kind of feel like a similar vein as to what Lily and Fix deal with the summer court. So, but I feel like the explanation's a little bit easier. Like, regardless of where Hendrix winds up in the power structure, he's got to be pretty high up there anyway, because he's physically so close to Marcone. Knows, he's one of 3 people basically who knows where his, 4 people on the outside who knows where his safe house is. But also, I'm sure Marcone has a provision that it's like, in case I get incapacitated, he is in charge of my physical security, so you fucking listen to Hendrix. So, the fact that Marcone is missing puts Hendrix and Guard in charge of trying to get Marcone back. So, like, he doesn't have to be his second, but I mean, he takes Hendrix everywhere, literally. So I
think that's part of the reason Torelli even shows up in the first place, because Hendrix and Guard are AWOL. If they were around, there's no way in hell he would have made that move.
Sure. Well, I think Guard would have been smart enough to be like, Marcone is indisposed, but he's not missing. Of course not. That'd be ridiculous. She would never let that sort of thing slide, because part of what I like about her character is that she is so concerned about how it makes her employer look, which is very professional for that sort of thing as well. But
yeah, well, I mean, let's face it, Marcone is an extension of Vatarung at this point, so what reflects on him at some point is, yeah.
Why you got to put it that way? Because now we've got Marcone and Vatarung and Rashid are the same person, because you've never seen them at the same place at the same time.
No, we don't have to do that. If you bring it up, that's your problem. I ignore those things because they're not valid.
Prove it.
What if Vatarung goes back in time and Marcone
and gets a tan?
Yeah, right. They don't have sunscreen back in the 400 AD. Come on now. So
listen, I'm sure they have camaraderie. I'm sure they have a working relationship in general, being in similar fields. I'm sure the whole eye thing is symbolism. Right. That doesn't mean he's him.
They've got jackets because of Team Eye Patch, them and Nick Fury. So, just be like, we all got eye patches. How cool are we? All right. So he gets the blood. They try the tracking spell. It doesn't work predictably, right? Because the Denarians throw it all off. Except he doesn't do that yet, because next is the actual meeting, right?
Well, everyone piles in the mic because they're all frozen.
Yeah. So
chivalry sucks.
Right. So yeah, you missed the whole. Almost missed the whole Harry threatening to kill Kincaid and pretending he was going to pull a gun on him, which he doesn't, and Kincaid acquiesces, but wouldn't have under other
between you and my captain. I know to whom I'm going to bid aloha.
Right, which is like the 3rd reference to Kincaid in Hawaii at this point.
Yeah,
and then Andreas's wifey makes the pass at Harry.
Right,
for the first time.
Man, don't reading these last couple of books.
I know, it's painful because you know where it's going to go.
Like, don't tell me that you don't. That it doesn't it works.
It was a nice fling.
Coulda, shoulda, woulda, but
right.
Could have been so good.
Yeah, so they are all freezing. Everybody gets in the cab of the truck except for Harry and Mouse. And then this is where Michael has that whole amateur work putting in the door comment we were talking about earlier. So, so yeah, Lucio makes a pass at Harry because she's been mind warped. So that makes it gross and uncool in 2019, Andreas. That doesn't make it romantic or anything like that, just so we're clear.
I mean, I just thought it worked. Like, the relationship would work. I thought they were good for each other.
Well, I think that's part of why the spell worked. You know, like there are multiple factors that go into it, but you know, like subliminal messaging, like it mostly works because you already had that idea in you in the first place. So it wasn't exactly like a domination. It was a suggestion that, you know, her defenses were lower and she kind of, part of her wanted it anyway and whatever. So it's just like, you know, it was a nudge more than anything else.
It was at least built on genuine affection and respect for Dresden.
Well, yeah, she says as much as the end of the next book.
Right.
There was something to build on. It was just maybe I could have, but not
right.
anymore.
Yeah, so fuck Peabody for ruining my ship.
Peabody's the only reason your ship happened.
Right.
It would have happened without Peabody. They were meant for each other.
No, her duty would have prevented her, just like it prevented Morgan.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. If anybody, yeah. Anyway, I can't think of a PC way to say that next part, so we'll just leave that off. So, anyway, so you get that whole thing. You get Thomas go for the high five to Harry, and then find out that Harry
man, and Harry's just like, what?
Still screws it up. Next is the aquarium, pretty much, or is there? Okay, so you go to the aquarium. You get a lot of the same kind of dual stuff. Like Kincaid and Ivy are there early to prepare the area. You know, you get circle a block and look for a footpath. So because the employees are going to go in, and a nice comment about how, you know, the marine biologists aren't doing it for the money.
Yeah. Jim definitely took a trip to Chicago to write this book because he's described the shed aquarium in a bit too much accuracy if you hadn't actually been in that room. It's the same thing with Union Station. Like, he kept comparing it to the Untouchables movie. It's like he definitely did a trip specifically to that. And I think I remember him in one of the tour for Skin Game. He mentioned like going to the shed aquarium and tapping on the glass. Like, how much force would it take to break this? How much water's in that? And
nice.
People got upset.
Right.
And then law enforcement was called.
It's a very hairy type of story. So, yeah, he's like, I should include this. Yeah. So basically, you get Dresden and Butthead, Nicodemus talking. So, you know, like Nicodemus wants to talk to Harry alone for a minute. They work it out so that happens. And then halfway through the conversation, Harry realizes that he's being an idiot and that Nicodemus.
It's a trap.
Yeah.
This is a pretty important conversation between Harry and Michael. That
happens
after.
Yeah.
No, there's another important one where Harry is basically willing to die to protect Michael's beliefs, and Michael can't. Like, he's got a hard time processing that. I thought it was important.
Isn't that still next?
Yeah, that's still after this.
No, they talk about it before the meeting, where it's. I'm pretty damn sure it's before the meeting.
Okay.
Oh, maybe you're right. Maybe you're
because there's a conversation
because he talks to Sonia afterward. He's like, he doesn't understand why you're doing that.
Oh, right. Yeah, you confused him. Right. So elaborate for everybody not on our wavelength.
That was it Harry lied to Lucio to get her to bring in the archive. So yeah, it was a
that was way before.
Back. Yeah, but because Michael knew that he lied, he felt uncomfortable, but he's putting himself at deadly risk so that Michael doesn't have to.
Right.
Right. He basically puts himself at risk of getting punished, maybe even like getting killed, so Michael doesn't have to compromise his ethics.
Right. Yeah, which I mean, what's funny is like I don't recall it being brought up here, but what I was thinking this time around is that if Harry gets killed because of his ethics, so does Molly. So don't do me any favors, Harry. Like, you know, like come on.
That doesn't get brought up, but I thought the same.
Right.
There is that.
Yeah. So
I think he mentions Molly. It's just not his main focus at that point.
Right. So meanwhile, back at the aquarium, Harry realizes that it's a trap moments before the trap gets sprung. You see Kincaid running around like a ghost spider monkey, which is fantastic. And, Kincaid takes out like 4 of the Denarians, and I think Harry takes out like 2.
At one point, when Harry's on the ground, Kincaid had lined up a shot, so he did 2 headshots with 1 bullet to 2 different Denarians.
Right. Yeah, you get...
Well, and they make a point of saying that, I think it's Tessa who says it, or Deirdre who says it, that, calling him the Hellhound and how he's hunted them before. The bad runs before with Kincaid.
Nice. Yeah. So,
and just Nicodemus also insulted, like, not even the Hellhound would stop me if I wanted to kill you or something when they're doing their face off.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, he has that antagonistic line with where he basically throws that crossing your heart thing that Ivy did the first time we meet her back in Kincaid's face.
Okay.
When they meet the first time, and she's like, do you promise, Pinky's cross your heart, and she crosses her heart about when they're talking about the duel with Ortega. And so when they're having the conversation right before Nicodemus and Dresden have their little face off, she goes, trust me about your mistress's honor or whatever, and then he does cross my heart to Kincaid.
Interesting.
Since he's got his, that's the other book where they first show up in his death masks, and we later find out that Anduriel's listening in on conversations left and right. So,
I like it. No, that's super subtle. Yeah. Wow.
So that's actually a hint to Nicodemus being able to listen in to people,
right?
Yeah, it's we don't find that out obviously later till Skin Game, but yeah, now once you find that out, you see these little things potentially as, oh well, the other 2 books he's involved in these 2 references, maybe he's been listening in the whole time.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing.
I know what you did to Cassius in the hotel room. God, would my face be red?
He was probably like watching front row seat with popcorn for Shadow. He's like, oh yeah, I always hated that Cassius guy. Yeah, go for the knees, Tris.
Well, that and I mean, I don't think Nicodemus gave a fuck. That's part of why they threw Cassius out. He was probably just like, why didn't you kill him? Now I'm gonna have to do it. So.
Oh, I mean, yeah, he throws him away like trash. That's what essentially Cassius says later in Deadbeat.
Right.
I mean, he pretty much says as much.
Right. So Aquarium, one of the coolest sequences in the series, in my opinion. The whole Harry and Kincaid running around being ninjas, ganking Denarians. You see Harry accidentally employ Soulfire for the first time. He made Thorn and Namshiel half the Denarian he used to be. You see them use their giant pentagram again to cut off the whole Aquarium, basically with Hellfire. It's a giant circle, basically, to cut Ivy off from magic, all of it. Dresden, because he got kind of the drop / early warning / pieced it together, was able to pull in a bunch of energy, is how he's able to just kind of run around. So you get some nice little moments with him, like humming with power that he's just holding on to, and some of those consequences. But Ivy did the same thing because she had anticipated the trap, I guess. So you get to see her actually kind of not even really cut loose, but you get to see her in action for the first time. So, she's holding off like 6 of the Denarians, basically, and makes some nice little witty comments about Tessa and, knowing where she comes from and her family, and be like, I have the bill of sale, or no, I have the return on investment of your education or whatever it is. It's such
I can draw you graphs.
Yeah, so I can draw you a graph in crayon. I like crayon.
Right. It's such a great low and high ding at the same time, right? Because it's like I'm a literal child, but I'm going to make you feel like one. So.
At this point, the archive has to be old enough that it's self-aware too.
She's
That's
like
self-aware
11.
that it's making fun. Yeah, it's snark. That's snark.
She has the entire history of snark in her brain.
Yeah,
that's true. But I want to make sure it's snark. I don't.
Yeah.
11-year-olds start to be self-aware that I'm not a little kid anymore.
Sure as hell have attitude about it.
Right. Yeah. So.
And I think this whole sequence. I actually don't really like Small Favor all that much, but this sequence is fantastic, and the rest of the book is great.
Is that why you haven't been talking? Because
well, I didn't want to interrupt too, but I've also been on the chat.
Well, I'm glad you did. Can you keep being quiet now? You don't like Small Favor.
It's like when people say they like Ghost Story. Both of these opinions are wrong.
And I'm factually correct about describing my opinion. My opinion might be wrong, but I'm not wrong about my
terrible opinion.
Yeah.
Anyway, so continue, Mr. Justin.
Basically, it culminates. She fights with Denarians. She kind of blasts a couple, right, as a warning initially. She basically like evaporated one of them.
It's like ozone.
Yeah,
their heads are just gone.
Blast Deidre into a water tank, and then she needed to swim out and was all pissed off.
Yeah, that was Harry.
Oh, Harry. Okay.
Yeah, he steps out from the bush and is like really angry that they're gonna use Kincaid against her.
Right.
And then blasts her across the water.
And then turns out that he's the booby.
Then he realizes she also likes me.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, guess what? Like many plans, it has multiple layers. So shit. He steps in it as much as he was worried about Kincaid and everything. So but the beauty of it is that one of the other layers that he didn't anticipate or realize was that they had gassed the place. So
it is so scary that if it wasn't for that gas, even magically cut off, the archive would have held out and won.
Probably. Yeah.
And they probably knew that, and that's why they built the plan to attack the child, not the archive.
Yeah. Right. Well, and it's all layers, right? So they set it up. The real thing is that they set it up so that they could not lose. That Nicodemus was going to be cut off.
Tradition.
Yeah, Nicodemus was going to be cut off outside with Dresden. Kincaid would have been inside with like a dozen of the Denarians, right? And the archive. And even if they had lost because they had already popped the gas, Nicodemus would have just come in and cleaned up afterwards with whatever was left of his retinue. So that was the thing. They had set it up so that even if it went pretty much all the way sideways, which it just about did, they still were going to win. Which, I mean, that's part of what I like about the Denarians is that they don't feel like super cliche comic book villains. Like, obviously, there's a fair bit of camp involved there at times, but like Nicodemus is like proper scary at moments, right? Where it's just like Dresden comes up with some plan he's going to get away with, whatever, and then Nicodemus is like, dude, I'm 2,000 years old. I thought of that. Not only have I thought of that, I've beaten the last 13 people to try it. So you just get crazy moments like that. So Harry tries to run off with Ivy, doesn't make it. He blasts one of the glass aquariums, which is why it's important to know how much force it takes to break one of those things.
I'm a writer. It's research,
right? Yeah, he drowned at least one or two of them. Two more of the Denarians. But they managed to make off with the little girl, so bummer.
And he wakes up mouth to mouth. Was it with Murphy? Yeah. And he spits dolphin water into her face when she had done Kool-Aid in the Something Borrowed. I think it was a short story with the wedding.
Right, or
because it was Billy and Georgia's wedding.
Right.
And
right.
Georgia had been kidnapped. So yeah, Something Borrowed. Yeah.
Right.
And then all the dolphins are like either Team Dresden or anti-Denarian or maybe Uriel's a dolphin.
Jake the dolphin.
Sure.
Yeah.
Does he have a little mustache?
I like how the dolphins help out.
Mm-hmm.
They're actually, he's like, the dolphins are pretty smart. They're like, hello, Denarians. It's pretty good.
Yep. So
you should ask Listens to Win about that.
About the dolphins.
Yeah.
How smart are dolphins?
Very.
It's actually so among the universities that Listen to Win gets his PhDs from, one of them is a dolphin university. So yeah, they're actually excellent doctors. But Anyway, so from the aquarium, things get murky again. So I mean, basically, Harry gets pissed off. Of course, they have another war council, don't they? Harry's going to use blood to track them finally, and then realizes, duh, Nicodemus has thought of that because he's lived for 2,000 years, and you're an idiot.
I think you're skipping over things.
What did I skip?
Well, so they go from the aquarium back to Michael's place, and they find out that they have all of the excess coins, and Michael's getting happy. Maybe everything will be done.
Yep.
And he can build houses.
Imagine coaching Little League.
And then immediately he gets done in a different play.
Yeah.
Like, you don't believe in the mission anymore, you're out.
And there was a highlight little moment of Harry was talking about his staff because Sonia had saved it. It's like, yeah, it's really hard to carve one of those, not like one of the whatever else I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
And forgets the blasting rod. Goes to sleep on the couch and wakes up to Molly saying someone's messed with his head.
Yep.
Right. So
we don't hear that, but we find out later that's what she said.
Yeah, in this moment, he doesn't hear the words, but he says, "Listen to the kid; she's right." And you basically get to tie this in later. When Murphy tells him about what was going on and catching him up, is that Molly knew somebody had mucked with his head because she's like that and she knows what that looks like and everything. And she said, "Listen for what he says when he wakes up because that'll be him trying to get through, his subconscious getting through." And he says, "Listen to the kid; she's right." While they're having that conversation
about.
Yeah, and then this is
a small detail about that as well. Did you notice in the fight? I think it is. He tries to think about his blasting rod, and he goes like "ow," and then gets distracted and thinks about something else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when he was thinking of carving it as well, he kind of just had the moment of a headache and stopped thinking about it.
And that's what it is. He's like carved kind of like my, and then it's "ow," and then he thinks about something else.
Nice.
I thought it was a great little detail.
Yeah, I'm not sure I had caught that. That's pretty subtle. So.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. We did skip a lot of this because the important scene with him and Michael, where basically he goes and grabs the sword and takes Michael into the other room or into the shed or whatever.
That happens after he talks to Nicodemus and he sets up the bargain again. All of the coins plus Fidelafius.
Which is after he writes a note to Ivy saying we're coming for you.
Yeah.
He uses the archive power to let her know.
Right. And another clever moment because he has an epiphany while he's talking about it and he's just like, hold on.
Yep.
When Harry goes out and talks to Nicodemus, he takes Mouse with him and Nick is scared of Mouse.
Right.
He's like, what is that? How did you get one? Yeah. And I want to see when that face off happens.
Yeah.
Right.
And Dariel's the one freaking out like, holy fuck.
So Mouse is going to be the next Knight of the Cross.
I mean, if you melt the sword down with the nail and just make him some sort of canine teeth cover, like Mother Winter's iron teeth,
right?
Put it on him.
Get him just a little shiv. He's just running around getting people in the.
Or what is it?
From Dark Souls.
No, in Isle of Dogs. I don't know if any of you guys saw it, but the one guy, he's got the canine tooth where it's got bombs in it or some shit. And it's Wes Anderson for you.
Yeah,
I want Dark Souls references. Sorry.
So make them. Go stop.
I did.
I'm not gonna get Dark Souls references.
All right.
Sorry.
So he makes the deal with Nicodemus. Good point. That happens first. He offered the sword and the coins because they had 20 of the coins on them or some nonsense. So they had quite a few because there were 6 left. So, but they physically had about 20 of them on them.
Right, plus the ones like last show that they had collected before.
Right, yeah, because there were a couple that were out of play, and then
Lastio, Luriel, Ursiel should all have been in a vault. At least.
Right.
Theoretically.
So
at this point, they probably still are.
Well, yes, they are because otherwise other things probably would have happened.
I mean, they don't show up they don't give last show out again until the events of changes necessitate it. They're like, okay, so we have someone who's willing to take this coin again now.
Well, but I mean, the other part of it is that they don't know Lashio's coin is taken because they assume Dresden has it or could do it.
Right at this point, yes.
So yeah. Okay, so he goes back inside, grabs Amarachius, and Michael goes out to the storage or whatever, and they have this conversation with Harry on his knees with Michael and the sword at his throat, and basically, this whole "don't you trust me" moment, and Michael's like, "How could I? Like, I know what the shadows, are like, and you never get free of them." And I feel like I'm really missing some of the text.
So Michael,
he said, "Do you then trust me for a little longer? Help me a little longer." And he's like, "I will if you answer one question for me." And he goes, "Okay, what happened to your blasting rod?" And then Harry falls down and he starts having a magical conniption in his head. And then Michael saves him using his holy power.
Yeah,
Lord,
references.
Right.
Take mercy upon this good man.
I thought that was kind of interesting. It seemed almost like Mab was intentionally playing on Michael's tendencies and Uriel's tendencies as well. She took away his free will, but then the damage gets healed by Michael being a friend.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. I just thought it was him being a paladin,
There's
Yeah,
that,
I
but
thought it was just people doing things according to their own natures.
Yeah.
That's what she does. That's what he does.
Yeah,
I
I think
doing
she banked on it a little bit of that the trauma would not hurt Dresden because someone was there to heal it.
I could agree that throughout the whole plot you have Mab and you have Nicodemus and you have even Marcone, maybe probably just Mab and Nicodemus playing 3-dimensional chess, 9-dimensional chess, whatever, trying to get. But I don't know that using Michael as a pawn was part of it.
Honestly,
that would be Uriel's game.
I think Mab would have done that shit anyway, because she willed it. So because she is Mab.
But if Uriel and Michael helped Dresden heal, she wouldn't be upset about it.
Right.
Well, I mean, let's face it, at that point, it's essentially you can have the fire back because now at this point, not only is Summers basically the biggest hitter coming in, we find out later that, he one-shots a Denarian, and they don't even have to worry about fighting because Harry at this point has realized what he can get for his favor and all this shit.
Right.
So it's not important at this point that he necessarily needs to suppress the fire because, one, he's going to know not to use it because somebody took it away from him. So and he figures out, okay, so there was a reason for this. And then he doesn't use it again until he's on the island with Marcone and he's got to have a plan anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So the rest of the conversation with Michael was about the shadow and how it's impossible to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then Harry calls him out for being, arrogant or whatever. And, it's like, so you're telling me that a knight or someone of the clergy was there every single time somebody gave up the coins or whatever, every single time they had a coin. Like, I thought the wizards had the market on arrogance or whatever his line is. So
earlier in the book, Michael had pointed out that Nicodemus makes it a routine thing to destroy all of the information they gathered on him.
Right.
But that is going to be more difficult in the future. Well, instead, what he's probably going to do is just seed in false information. Do that fake news tactic.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah. And likely instilling the idea that you can never, ever get rid of a shadow would be something like that.
That's fair. Yeah. No, I like that angle, that it's Nicodemus's misinformation because, otherwise they'd be, everybody'd be doing it. So
to be fair,
well, it's ridiculously hard to do, but even then, if you had a sliver of hope, you could resist.
To be fair, I think Nicodemus mostly thinks it's impossible because he assumes the shadow is there.
Also, that
and his downfall.
It's like Mab and Mab at the end of Ghost Story saying "you're mine" and Uriel's words balancing it out that no, you aren't, because from her perspective, she's got well over a millennia worth of experience saying no. When I decide someone's mine, they're mine.
Right. The other thing I was going to say is so the shadow thing always seemed like it was particularly harsh to wizards, right? Because it's not just enough they give up the coin and the power of the coin. Harry has to forsake his power, whereas Sonya had to forsake only the coin because he had no power. right? And so I always thought there was a particular imbalance there. Or does Sonya technically have the shadow in there still as well? And maybe just the nature of being a knight, and having a sword.
If we take, and I don't really see a reason not to, if we take what Lash always said at face value, once you take up the coin, the shadow reintegrates with the fallen. So once you've given up the coin, you're giving up the whole thing.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
There's no more.
There's something.
Yeah, there's no more shadow hanging around. But yeah, I mean, Uriel pretty much says as much at the end of this book, or maybe he doesn't say as much, but it makes the most sense that the Denarians, he had to balance it out, but they also gave him Hellfire, so Uriel ends up balancing that out with Soulfire because now this is power lost that the Denarians gave him type deal.
Right.
I mean, because there's no really logical way to justify Uriel giving him Soulfire unless it's balancing out the loss of the Hellfire. Because that seems like it's extra.
Described it
was not balancing out the loss of the Hellfire. It's balancing out that they used the Prince of Darkness's.
Yeah, Uriel was countering Lucifer.
Really, but with Soulfire.
But yeah, that's the thing. The Soulfire Harry uses, it doesn't counter the pentagram. It doesn't really stop anything.
It's a long-term investment. He's allowed to do something in response only when they do something. They decided to use like the Prince of Darkness uses Hellfire, so Uriel can do something, and he's like, I could give him my Soulfire, maybe, who knows, kind of like he did, or I could let Harry use Soulfire. That's a better investment in the long term.
I like this better actually. So I see what you're saying. I'm going to raise you one. This is what allows Uriel to give up his grace in Skin Game. Him giving his grace to Michael is the balancing act of Lucifer powering that circle, because Lucifer basically in the overarching thing, he's not on God's level. He's not on the White God's power level. He's
on Uriel's level, right?
Yes. He's an archangel level. And so Uriel gives Michael his grace and then basically has to abide by Michael's free will because mortal. And that's his balancing influence. That's how Uriel was able to empower it. Because the Soulfire, Hellfire thing does seem like a balance, but that seems like something at Butcher's level, not necessarily like I can't think of an in-universe reason why he's able to do that. Why Uriel would care.
They used the Prince of Darkness Soulfire twice. So once he gives Soulfire to Harry, and the other he's safe for giving Michael his grace.
Well, I guess that could be too. It could be both ways, I suppose. But yeah,
I don't know. I thought that it made sense that it was just like, this has less of an impact now, but in the grand scheme of things, it balances out and it's a better investment. Because Uriel is all about the long game,
right? So, and that's part of why I was like, no, I like this even better because it is such a long con. It is another 5 books from now where he basically finally does balance out the whole Lucifer thing by giving his grace. And I'm not saying that is what happened, but we want to talk about balance,
Yeah, I guess I'm rereading the last line now where you got to think that maybe there's a matter of balance here. Maybe one archangel invested his strength in the situation overtly and immediately. Maybe another one was just quieter about it, thinking long term. Maybe he already gave you a hand, and then his right hand erupts into pins and needles, reminding him of the Soulfire.
So that seems like it was Uriel's intent.
Good call. Yeah, good call. So speaking of Hellfire, one thing we forgot to mention at the Aquarium is that the Aquarium conversation with Nicodemus is where Harry dropped the bomb, and they talked about the Black Council. Yep. And Nicodemus knows the organization, but he's like, okay, we'll talk about it in your parlance because, you're a wizard, so everything's a council to you. But Nicodemus didn't realize that one of the Denarians had betrayed him, but then seems to immediately realize which one it is. So,
yeah, and can be surprised, but he doesn't usually. He can pick up on it.
You can also see, this is also a pretty good hint, I feel like, or maybe it is a good hint. I don't know, or maybe just a hint to his arrogance, but I think it's a good hint to his omnipotence. I don't know, omnipotence.
Him
knowing or not.
Right.
that like he gets like there's something he didn't know, and he like reacts very strongly,
violently even, because he pins Harry to the wall. So,
well, at the end too, when he finds out that Namshil's the one who made off with the Crown Royal bag, right, with all the coins, and he mentions he pulled that trick before on some saint where he strangled him, and he talks about how Deirdre or Tessa are probably our own Judas.
Rosanna or Tessa. He doesn't mention Deirdre. He trusts. I think Deirdre is one of the few people he trusts completely.
Well, that's why I thought it was interesting that he said. Are you sure? Was it Deirdre?
Rosanna and I think because like the whole point in Skin Games is that she's the only one he trusts.
what were you saying, director? While he's looking at
Thorn Namshield did the strangle spell against someone in the 13th century in Glasgow, which seems like a very specific reference.
Right. Yeah, I looked it up like freaking 5 times, and there's nothing.
Okay.
Right. Some additional little things, just because I think I brought this up when we were doing Proven Guilty, is that we weren't sure on like the size and disposition of the Black Council and things like that. And it seems like there's only the one Denarian on it, at least as far as anybody knows. So it seemed very, very specifically brought up that there was only one Denarian that was there at Arctis Tor, and it was probably Thorn and Namshiel specifically. So,
weird thought. So Namshiel throws the bag off to the side, and we assume it's taken by Tessa or Rosanna or something like that.
Right.
But what if it was whoever went to Demon Reach in Turncoat via the ways?
Gave it up to a mortal rando.
No, they gave it to the Black Council.
Oh, yeah. Black Council wizard.
Yeah, to the unseen force, whether or not that was Christos directly or whoever else they got on the inside of the council.
Yeah, because that's Thorn and Namshiel, so...
Maybe. I mean, I don't remember that we see any of these particular Denarians pop up again in Skin Game. So they could still be out and about there somewhere.
Right.
Wait, Tessa.
No, but I'm saying of the dead ones that were in the bag. That the bag went lost, and so none of these guys pop up. The only ones that pop up again are Ursio and Lashiel, and the ones we already knew were AWOL before this. Right. So I guess it's possible.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think because they have Sonya tied up in Tehran or something like that, right? And
Iran.
Yeah. And
Iran, yeah.
But I'm not sure if we saw who was there, for the smoke
Shaggy
screen.
Feathers.
Okay.
And at least one other.
Okay.
Shaggy Feathers
is the one that Thomas killed, I think. So.
Well, and plus there's also, I think it's Magog's coin after my namesake kills him, and that one may be with Marcone.
Mm-hmm. Or Guard.
Yeah.
Right. So essentially, Monarch has the oversight of that particular one.
The island is another example of Harry being smart instead of being a brute. Actually figuring out where they are beforehand.
Well, wasn't that
Lucio?
Yeah, it was like that was.
Yeah, Lucio tells him it's at the end of this one, right? That his sight is coming in. The island's going to be important to you later.
Yeah, even before that, though, what Andreas is talking about is the ley lines conversation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, where Lucio brings out the map.
Yeah, because he's like, I can't track him through blood, because of course they thought of that, because also it's over, miles of water, so that's never going to work. Yeah, so to get us back on track a little bit, since we're way over already anyway, so... Yeah, Harry tries to track him. It doesn't work out. Lucio's like, hey, stupid. For some reason, we have these ancient maps of ley lines that have never been mentioned before, but are super convenient right now. So,
for some reason, because the plot didn't dictate they'd be brought up until the next couple of books where we find out what Demon Reach is.
Right. So he's probably on this island right there. Lucky guess. The water beetle totally... no, that doesn't really factor until the end. So they make a deal. Rosanna shows up. They take Sonya, Michael, and Dresden to the island. I mean, that you have a little bit of quip about how, Rosanna did something that set them off, and then Harry, she's like, yeah, but you brought the knights, and he's like, yeah, because it's you guys.
Nicodemus was supposed to be the one to meet them and take
Oh
them.
yeah, that's right.
Rosanna was pulling out Harry calls her on her damsel act, like making people like Sonya feel bad for her.
Yeah.
Right.
And
like, oh, she's a poor tortured demon.
Yeah, on the boat. And it was great because he was super a dick about it, but I mean, it's not like she didn't earn it. So
you immortal types wouldn't recognize a pop culture reference if it deposited egg in your throat.
Yeah, skittered up and it implanted a embryo in your esophagus. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And then they get attacked by kelpies out on the water.
As one does.
Right. So yeah, they're like, uh-oh, what? Warm wind. Summer's coming. So
go faster. Go.
Right. So they get attacked by kelpies.
Even Rostand gets kind of like, oh shit.
Right. They get to the island. There's really great moments again between Harry and Nicodemus where, Harry's playing his little gambit out and basically, pretending to be the loose cannon that Michael still can't totally trust him, right? So he's worried that Harry's going to employ the sword, and Harry's just trying to get a peek at where they're holding Marcone. But Michael seems to be really freaking worried about it for a minute until Harry sees Marcone and then says, okay, and then throws the sword to Michael, and all hell breaks loose.
The last time he saw Harry do something like that with his sword, his godmother almost destroyed it.
Right. Yeah, so I thought that was just great because, Michael not being in on the plan really sells the plan, So Harry uses Dragon's Breath rounds, which we've totally never seen before, but he kind of uses them as a flare, So he blinds all the shooters and
in comes the best scene in the Dresden Files.
Really? The best scene? This is what you're gonna. This is your hill.
Okay. I know it's the best scene, but I really like the Ride of the Valkyries.
You mean the scene that they did in Death Masks?
Right.
Oh.
Yeah,
I love the scene.
Do you hear strings?
Also, you gotta appreciate how this is going to be the first of 2 Denarian books in a row where Harry doesn't let Michael in on his plan and outsmarts Nicodemus. You'd think he'd learn a little bit, because the next book he doesn't know about Goodman. Neither one of them know about Goodman, right. And he's just playing his own game again.
Game over, man. Harry's getting smart.
Yeah,
and then even the Death Masks, Harry still kind of outsmarts Nicodemus with grabbing him by the noose and yanking.
Well, he gets a little taste of it, right? But then this one, of course,
he figures it out. Oh yeah, by the way,
right. It seemed like I got it seemed like I got a response. We should try that more with more gusto.
Yeah. Once more feeling.
I like that specific part, right? He's like, most people stop when they stop fighting. Just keep hanging on.
Right. Yeah. So basically, all hell breaks loose. Michael running around with 2 swords of the cross. Sonya there to back him up. AK-47 and sword. They're killing Denarians. A couple. They're dealing with the mortal dudes and the dogs. Harry sees the most genius, beautiful circle he's ever seen, and luckily it only takes a monkey with a stick to break the whole thing and bring it down. So he smashes Ivy out of it. They had some crazy awesome circle that they were holding her in to cut her off from her power and spin her and everything, because she used that in the aquarium, right? That was kind of the
to Magog.
Yes.
She had him suspended and kept spinning him around sickeningly. So they did that to her.
Right. They were like, good idea, little girl. Yeah. So they get Marcone out. Guard, has a nice little side-mounted minigun that they're, dealing with all the mortal types, and they get everybody out, except for one mostly. So
Marcone again shows why Harry can't just completely hate him.
Right.
Yeah.
I have an interesting observation with this. We have the archive in a circle, in a magic circle.
Yeah.
Harry can still communicate to her through her innate magic where he writes the note.
Maybe she wasn't in the circle yet.
I think she was. I think that spell is just fundamental
Yeah, that's what I would be thinking. Is that
It
it's
like
just,
bypasses a circle. It's all encompassing always.
but
So
the
the
circle is that
archive
much more
can't be cut
powerful,
off
too.
from getting information.
Well, there's
Well,
also nothing to say that magical influence can't get in. It's just to keep her power from getting out, basically.
Mhm.
So that's true.
But I'll take it one more too, because he makes a reference here again that the previous best circle he saw was in full moon, but the full moon circle was targeted to specific things. So maybe they just didn't account for it, you know, but
they might not have cared. They would have thought to care about that.
right.
Right.
And that's kind of what I'm thinking too, is that it is another one of those Dresden clever moments where it's just like, yep, 2,000 years old, never thought about that. So,
You know, if I think it might be developed a little bit. Maybe this wouldn't be true to the Dresden Files, but it's one of those Sauron weaknesses where he looks for the big and obvious things that'll oppose him, and doesn't ever consider that the little things would be his undoing. You know.
well, if Harry finds a hobbit that just happens to kill Nicodemus, you know, in book 20, then I'm
He has a hobbit, and she works for, or used to work for Chicago Police Department.
and she took her shot in book 15 and missed. So speaking of the feels then, so basically Harry and Marcone and the archive get to where they're going to get winched up into the helicopter and everything like that. Marcone's supposed to go first because that's how they got Guard and Hendrix to help out. But Marcone won't leave before the little girl, so Harry puts her in his arms and sends them both up. And then while they're waiting, he just happens to look up and see Guard is looking really hard at Michael for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And so he makes
And then seals his fate.
Yeah, right. Well, kind of. I mean, it's the difference between, you know, seriously maimed or dead, you know. So but yeah, he sends Michael up next, but Tessa manages to get the machine gun from him because Harry is bad with guns, and so he got tangled up in the harness, and then she takes it and shoots Michael. And you know, basically, I mean, when I read it the first time, I thought he was dead. Like I was just like, yep, he's dead.
It's almost like it was a miracle that he survived.
Right. Or he spit in the eye of destiny, as it were. So yeah, Michael gets taken out practically, and then in that same burst of fire, basically the helicopter takes a bunch of rounds, so it ends up having to fly off, and we're not sure if they're going to make it, but spoilers, they do. That leaves Harry stuck on the island by himself with a bunch of Denarians, a bunch of other dudes, and you know, one pissed off Gruff, as we find out. So, I mean, E.G., you just might as well talk about yourself.
Was not pissed off, was perfectly reserved and calm. Only got pissed off when the idiot Denarian decided that he was going to mouth off.
Right. Which is great, too, because, like, I always assumed that they were talking in, like, an angelic tongue or something like that, but it's entirely possible it was just, like, whatever Gruff, you know, speaks. Yeah. And for whatever reason, Gruff is talking in English for our benefit, right? And
well, I'm pretty sure most supernatural creatures are kind of like, you know, they have the all-speak and the universal translator. They just know that shit.
Right.
Also, when a gigantic monster just like, rah, at you, you kind of figure out what it means.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, but no, they were having a really intense, like, conversation. Just because it came out in growls,
yeah,
doesn't mean there wasn't meaning behind them that he was answering.
Does your dog ever make noises at you? You can have full conversations with animals.
Yeah,
but you don't usually tell your dog, listen, don't mistake peaceable intentions for the fact that I'm not giving you a milk bone.
Right.
You don't have that level of understanding.
You don't have the bones. Yeah.
But yeah, then he one-shots Magog because Magog sucks and
turns him into a garden, which I think was a great touch too, because like he one-shots him with some green shit that also sprouts flowers because summer.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, well, because and Harry makes a comment that it looks like he died painlessly, like he just done.
Right.
He just stopped living.
Mm-hmm. And then he finds out that he's basically Murphy height and this really imposing creature, and he basically worms his way out of having to duel someone that would have ragdolled him all over the place by making him leave the field of combat, which would end all the hostilities and get him a donut.
Right. And it's all of this combined, right? So he one-shots their bruiser Denarian that we've got in this book. He shows up with all this pomp and circumstance, stomping his staff and sounds really big and scary. And we've already seen Tiny, who's like bigger than McAnally's practically, right? And so we're expecting something even more huge. Right. And then he's 4 foot nothing, but he also has 3 stoles of the senior council on him. So he's defeated at least 3 senior council level wizards that he's just wearing as badges. Mm-hmm. And so, then they have, their little conversation. I'm trying to remember what even sets off the joking because.
Because Harry says, look, dude, I have a hard enough time figuring out what mortal women want.
Oh, yes.
Let alone what Mab, a Fey woman would want, and he starts hee-haw laughing.
Right. So they're both laughing their asses off and have this tender moment, and then Gruff is like, yeah, but I'm still going to have to kill you. And
he's like, listen, and he makes it very clear. It's like, so you serve Summer and then the Queen in that order, right?
Right. Yeah. And if one of us wasn't here, then it would all be over? Yes. Cool. Go get me a donut. What? That's it. That's all I want. But it's got to be a real one. Yeah.
Fresh and warm, so you have to wait for the bakeries to open.
Exactly. That's my favorite part. That and then the whole like, would thou likest jelly in thy donut? So
pray nay, but with sprinkles on top, or however he says that.
Although he wastes it on vanilla. I mean, that's just sacrilege.
It's a pretty close second for me.
This is the part of the whole emissary subplot that made sense to me. The donut thing, that was funny. Eldest Gruff is hilarious. He's wonderful.
Right.
Building up to this, I could have been fine without all of those fight scenes but this scene makes it worth it. And yet it feels so triumphant when Terry has the donut and he's eating it, he's snacking on it.
Well, that's because he's rubbing it in Thomas's face.
Yeah, it's so triumphant and wonderful. And then it comes back. He gets thrown at him. The whole event gets thrown back at him by good old what's his face in the next book.
Well, it's
Morgan.
Morgan makes fun of him, and it says all of Fairy Court was laughing at him for choosing a donut as his boon.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, it literally saved his life. But yeah, the whole comment from Thomas, Christ, you don't even explain the little things, do you? It's like a truck.
Like a truck. Yeah. Master's delivery on that is really good.
Right. He probably had a donut for that. So
the thing between the donut and Gruff not killing him is the fight. Is like the fight and escape from the island.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a fight. He gets away from all the Denarians except Magog, basically, and Eldest kills him, and then they leave. Oh well, no. Then he goes to confront Nicodemus.
Harry goes for the boat. Nicodemus is there because he's not a comic book villain, so he's like, of course, the one way off the island. Yeah.
And here's my biggest pet peeve plot hole in the whole book.
Okay.
When after he strangles him, throws him in the water. There's all these gunmen on the beach, and she's like, "Don't shoot! You'll hit my father!"
Right.
And I'm just like,
right.
Oh?
I mean, we kind of see in a couple of places, honestly. I think Deidre is really, she's not very bright. Like, despite the fact that she's probably almost 2,000 years old herself and all of this other stuff, like, you see her makes a whole lot of questionable choices and be driven by her emotions all the time. But yeah, that's definitely one of those things. Like,
Nick is closest to dead as she's probably ever seen him because of the thing that protects him, and maybe she's worried that a couple bullet holes might push him over the edge.
There is that.
No, but okay, that if that's how you want to justify it, whatever. Like the dude, she has to know that the noose makes him all but invulnerable, or the fact that if he's
almost dead,
if he isn't dead, then Enduriel's going to save him. If he is dead, then a couple of bullet holes aren't going to make it worse. So I don't know. Like, I mean, there was
slightly alive.
It's like the post earlier this week, crying about how like Harry wouldn't have been able to survive that many, trained marksmen shooting at him anyway, and all of that stuff too. Like they probably should have died on that island a couple of different ways, but they had a lot of
getting hit by the bullets, but his spell protected duster saves him.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair. So I know there's some of that. There's the shields and things as well. Like for me, it's the A-team stuff, right? We got the inverse law of ninjutsu is on our side. We've got plot armor thicker than some battleship hulls. Like just the whole thing. And then to balance the scales, we got Michael to pay for it all. So sorry, too soon. That hurt me. So,
but it didn't stop you.
No, I'm terrible.
Yeah. And then Thomas shows up with the water beetle because Harry was thinking ahead, and
right.
Murphy takes Fidelakius and gets a job offer.
Right. Yeah, all she has to do is draw it, and Deidre bitches out and leaves. So again, not very smart because, like, I really think Deirdre probably could have taken them, even with the sword, but I don't know.
It depends on how much they were superpowering the sword, but
right. How much Big G has got his hand on the scale this time because because I think it's even earlier in this book, Michael has the line where he's like, yeah, normally we prefer to do like 2-on-1, 3-on-1 if we can manage it. And so like definitely a 1-on-1, we've seen them do it in the book series because plot reasons, but Murphy not really being trained, barely picking it up, etc. They'd be having a
She's pretty well versed in sword fighting, isn't she?
She is, but she didn't know what she was getting into in that fight.
Otherwise, she's useless.
She's not. It's not like she's Michael trained or even Sonya trained. So that's mostly what I mean. I mean, she would kick Butter's ass, but
listen, she's trained enough that she was able to. I mean, you want to say Nicodemus threw that fight, fine, but there's really no reason for him to throw that fight unless he actively is like. It's like he got surprised and then he's like, "Oh, but wait, I can fuck her over with the swords later." So you have someone who has no business beating a guy with 2,000 years of swordplay.
Unless she's just that good.
It's the Hobbit factor.
Yeah, right. She is no man. Ha!
Right, okay. But that's what I'm saying. So she's that good with a katana, and she's an expert marksman, and jujitsu, and all while rising to the ranks of running her own unit in the Chicago Police Department.
Well, it was also just that one moment functionally. That and changes. I don't know that when she tries in Skin Game, she fails.
No, she wins the fight, but she breaks the sword because of her judgment.
Oh, right. Well, okay. I still count that as a loss.
And yeah, I mean, obviously, Nicodemus is going to count that as a win as well. But I feel like there's a fair bit of balancing, which is. Okay, so nerding out entirely here, right? The fight between Murphy and Nicodemus, and this is a terrible analogy, is the same as the fight between Yoda and Count Dooku in Clone Wars, right? They're equal in the Force, so they have to decide it with swords at that point. And yes, Nicodemus should have still been able to kick her ass, but for reasons they're on the same thing. But I don't know, like. To me, that doesn't bother me. It's all there to set up the moral choice that is the real fight, right? And that's part of what I like about the Denarians and the Knights is that even Michael says, "Look, I'm not here to kill the Denarians. I'm here to redeem them," And so it just kind of subverts what you would kind of expect with the fact that they're worked into swords and other weapons. Is that it's really a spiritual battle that they're waging. Yeah, which should be the more true interpretation of the battle between good and evil. There's not literal armies taking fields against each other doing this shit. And they kind of bring it up in The Warrior, right? That it's a moral battle. It's not a physical one. And Murphy lost. She might have won the physical battle, but it might have been Nicodemus threw the fight just to goad her into the thing, right? Like you had kind of mentioned that. He drew
a chance to take when even he says, "I don't know if it would have worked if you didn't have that little line of judgment." Like he could have potentially lost his head there.
Well,
I don't buy it because I mean he's killed Knights of the Cross before, and so I mean he hasn't necessarily broken swords before, but and maybe that's the difference. Is like this was the first time he took the gambit to go for the sword break versus just killing her outright. So he's like, I could just stop the knight, or I could break the sword. Which again, to him, he's focusing on the wrong point. Because
it's a hell of a chance for him to take, especially when he's Harry's goaded him before with how many times do you wait in the first book they meet. How many times have you woken up in the night with a cold sweat, like this sword's going to come right through your neck? Now that literal sword is at his neck, and he's taking that chance as his plan all along. It seems like something he saw the opportunity and he took it because he really didn't have another choice.
Right. Well, and I mean, we'll get back there. I think I've only read it the once, so I'll be curious to read it with a different interpretation. So. Okay, what do we got left? They
leave. He thwarts them off. They escape the island, and he has a talk with Mab and Uriel at the end after in the hospital chapel.
Michael thing, where he's like, "Yeah, you can all fuck off."
Yeah, he's gonna stay with Michael.
Right.
Charity says families stay.
Yeah, families stay.
Yeah, and
the acceptance of Harry from well, she probably accepted him like 3 books ago, but Harry doesn't really know until here.
Right. And it does mirror a little bit more of the way that she was talking to him in the beginning of the book, of you never got to throw snowballs when you were a kid, you never had that family moment, and she throws snowballs at him.
Right.
And now she insists that families stay, and it kind of echoes on more with Maggie's situation later.
Right. She's a lot warmer to him in this book. Absolutely. The thing that I was going to bring up about the whole snowball fight and everything like that is she is letting Harry and Molly practice magic with the kids in the back fucking yard. What?
That's the point.
I was like, if that doesn't show you how far she's come, like, because the entire time in Proven Guilty, right, they were like, you're going to give up your magic because that's what I did for the family and all this other stuff, and why everyone's like, oh man, I don't know how they're going to take Molly being the Winter Lady and shit. And it was like, I mean, they were in the backyard doing magic, letting the kids throw snowballs at Molly to participate in it, so they were actively participating in her magical training at that point. So but she's definitely come around. I blame Proven Guilty. Obviously you went into the literal heart of winter to help me save my baby girl, probably does a lot to endear it. The fact that Michael would be there, as she says, Michael would be here for you. You're going to be here for him. Super tender, more with the feels.
Yeah. And then the argument with Uriel.
Was it an argument?
It's kind of. He starts yelling about Lucifer and all that.
Uriel.
Yeah, he was yelling at God for sure. It's like, you're not the first person that's been mad at him. It's not his fault, but I understand. Mab freezing his eyeballs. Good times.
Nah, the freezing the eyeballs, I think, happened.
His memory there.
No. So she froze his eyeballs when he insulted her when she was originally in the beginning of the book, and he had already been questioning, why are you using Greymalkin? And then when she was explaining herself at the end, after she threatened of taking Thomas, she was thinking of the insult that Nicodemus had done, and we don't know yet that Maeve has been infected, but she's holding that against him. And she speaks using her own voice after Greymalkin warned about that would destroy anyone listening. And he has a concussion after.
Right. And then he goes to confront Marcone, about the coin, because they were like, hey, guess what? We came up a coin short. It's like, I know exactly who had the opportunity at least to do that. So
he will make inquiries of which we have not heard the result of yet.
Right.
And then Sonia gives him Amarachius.
We also have the little bit where Harry calls out Helen as being the one that might have given up.
Yes. Yeah,
that's all but confirmed by her that she did do that.
Right.
Yeah, well, Harry basically tells her, listen, he's not an idiot. We're going to figure this shit out.
Right.
Yeah. So he uses it for leverage for information later, which he also hasn't called in yet.
Oh, really?
We haven't seen Beckett since this book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right.
which is fine. 2 books in a row is enough.
We'll put it on the shelf
For
in the
peace
library. No, just I think that's what I'm going to call like every loose end that it's like this is going to come up later. It's like it's in Lord Race library. So, once that pays off, we can get all these other little nuggets to pay off. So
You can't pay off a nugget that the guy doesn't even remember.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. I'm like, hey man, when this big one pays off, all the little shit that he doesn't remember can pay off. So, all right,
So, are we done? We're good.
That's it.
I think so.
I
Although
mean,
I
we're
have to
15
say,
minutes shy of 2 hours. Come on.
whatever the fuck that Jim did to Mab in chapter 49, because the next day that he gave out that chapter to the betas, we had a bomb cyclone in Denver.
Yeah.
Well, he revealed that she was, she was pissed off about everything that happened at Arctis Tour. So she was just voicing her displeasure.
we
Because that's how
didn't.
the world works.
Oh wait, never mind. We totally did. Never mind.
Huh?
We did at the end. We got a fun little tidbit about the Archangels. That was interesting.
Maybe he said
Right.
that she was one of the Furies, and they don't like to be called that. They prefer to be called the kindly ones. Nobody reads Sandman in here? These are the worst.
No.
The worst. No, never mind. Okay, so is that it?
That bomb cyclone sucked. That's all I'm saying.
Sorry.
It's been how many years? Get over it.
Yes. Yeah, but did you die? No, sorry. That terrible. I hope nobody died. Anyway.
Should we do the plugs?
I'm sure somebody died. Somebody always dies.
I mean, it's called a bomb cyclone. I'm not even sure I've heard that terminology before.
Me neither. And it's like a tropical storm over land or something. It's like,
Well, that's because they replace it every
this?
couple of, like, it's like when you posted that link before, and I see, and this year's buzzword was the
Right.
what the hell did I don't
Polar
even remember.
vortex.
Yeah.
The polar vortex.
Right.
They come up with something every 5 years, and they're just like, "Oh my god, it's the storm that's going to kill us all," and gets people to watch the Weather Channel.
60 degrees to bomb cyclone back to 50s, because
And this was before weed was legal, so there was nothing to do.
all right, I think we're all
Okay,
done.
so the plugs. Thank you for watching the Dresden Files podcast.
Holy shit, Ben's here.
I've been talking the whole time. Episode 84, parts 1 and 2. We are happy that you watched. We have a whole bunch of other podcasts for you to listen to as part of the Broken Jars Network. We have Great Scott going on The Office, almost done, but still getting some episodes out there. High Fantasy, which is on hiatus, but still check out their back catalog. We also have Sim Talk, which is a super professional podcast about professionals talking about professional things. Just
The only
professional things.
They talk
Hashtag.
about simulations.
And
They do,
professionalism.
but not about SimCity, alas. They do talk about professional simulations, as you say, industrial stuff. So yes, all sorts of professional things happening at the Broken Jars Network, the least of which is the Dresden Files podcast. Thank you for watching. I think, is there anything else? Am I missing other podcasts?
A very professional outro of thank you for watching. Oh, let me keep talking.